Jameson, I'll let you
Well,
take it from here.
thank you so much, Hillary. I really appreciate it. And honestly, it is my distinct pleasure to have back some of my absolute favorite students from the program. No one else is here, so I can probably say this. Probably my top 4 students, right, in the program. Absolutely phenomenal individuals. They're all doing really different stuff out there in the wild, but all equally cool. I am going to ask you to just briefly introduce yourself, maybe say where you're working at, and give a quick description of your current job. You show up in random order on my screen, so I'm just going to call in the order that I see y'all. Scott, maybe you could start.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey everyone, you're considering a pretty solid program. I feel like it'll give you some good foundational skills in data science. It's also just fun. And if you're the nerdy type who loves numbers, definitely keep considering it. Hopefully we can kind of persuade you tonight. My name is Scott Richter. I'm a alumnus here of the data science program. I also got my undergraduate in economics at Willamette and my master's in business administration from the same school. After leaving the master's in data science, I worked for a better half of a year at a startup here called SkyPoint Cloud, where I was an analytics consultant working with a breadth of different industries. I left that job in April of this year to work as a freelance data science consultant for a little bit. And that's when I applied and got into my current job, where I'm a data scientist at Activision. So if you're familiar with video games, kind of like Call of Duty, Guitar Hero, that's the stuff that we do. I work on the mobile analytics team as a data scientist for Call of Duty Mobile, where I perform statistical tests to understand user behavior and try to make a good gaming experience.
Thank you, Scott. When my spouse was pregnant with our eldest child, who is now 15, she spent 2 straight weeks mastering Guitar Hero and eating Thai food. Fun fact. Anyway, Colleen, maybe you could go next.
I'm Colleen Smythe, she, her pronouns, and I was in the same graduating class as Scott, so class of 2021 in the MSDS. I also did my undergrad at Willamette in history, and I am a high school math teacher in Portland Public Schools, which I was also doing when I was in the program, and I now teach a class in data science.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Carrie.
My name's Carrie Olson. I graduated this year, but I was in class also with Scott and Colleen. I currently work for Adobe, and man, what do? I basically talk to other companies about what analytics questions they have, and then try to help solve those with Adobe's tools. So it's been pretty fun. Started there in February. Before that, worked at Willamette.
Thank you, Carrie. Julian, last but not least.
Hello, everybody. I'm Julian, he, him pronouns. I have kind of a circuitous route, but I definitely started in sociology, went through the Peace Corps, got my MBA, moved into my master's of data science, and now I work for KPMG as a customer experience consultant. It's a lot of fun. Work with all sorts of clients, helping them with content and understanding the voice of the customer and doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I use data science a lot in this role, even though it's usually a qual heavy, but you guys are making the right choice with your interest. Yeah, data science is a lot of fun.
All right, so thank you very much. Very cool, very varied also in your career trajectories. I'm curious, what are the sorts of skills that you learn in our program that you tend to employ the most at your current job? And if you want either just chime in or raise your hand. We don't need to go round robin or anything like that. We can keep this a little bit more informal. I will call on you if no one talks, though. Yeah, go for it, Julian.
That's okay, I'll talk. I'll be the sacrificial lamb. I volunteer as tribute. But I think data storytelling is for sure one of the biggest pieces. You know, you don't necessarily have to be the best coder. You don't have to be the best at math. As a matter of fact, I wasn't. I don't have the econ background that Scott did. But like one of my biggest, I think, advantages is definitely being able to condense all of that data, speak to even the people that are way more. I wasn't the most quant person in my class. Like that was probably Liam, for those who know. He was very, 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 very good. And just being able to take that and translate that into a story, whether that's managerial insights or whether that's something that's on the financial end, or depending on where you want to be in that spectrum, being able to take very complicated issues and boil it down to its core essence is the thing that I use almost every single day. And I use structured thinking for that I learned in data science, but I also use a lot of data science for that as well.
Cool, thank you. Who else wants to chime in on this one?
I think I also just learned digesting and communicating complex ideas. So people are going to, be speaking about different tools, different languages, and making sure you listen, can get it right, and then help them get that through analytics or how you get there. I would say was probably the most important thing I took away. Can you listen and can you communicate well?
Thanks. Scott, Colleen, same data communication or something else? Yeah, heavy nods.
100%. You're going to be, if you're the subject matter expert on any sort of data project, you're going to be the one who's looking at all of the super fine-tooth data, which can get really obscure if you're just a business user who's coming in and wants to know, say, how something performed, what to expect, what decisions to make. They aren't going to be at the same level of granularity as you. So what falls on you is being able to take that really obscure granular data and, as Julian and Carrie were saying, get that into some form so that someone who has no idea what you're talking about could understand it and make a decision with it.
Yeah, thanks. Colleen, any thoughts?
I would really agree with what Julian said, and data storytelling being a really essential part of this program, and what I use the most in my day-to-day life. So whether it's telling stories with data that I'm analyzing about my classroom, or talking about, we have data analysis meetings every quarter as a staff that are always really frustrating for me. But I hope that I raise the level of them a little bit by bringing in some of the things that we use in this program to think more critically about our data, and to be more thoughtful about how we collect it and analyze it, and what kinds of like breakdowns and subgroups and things that we're looking at, which are all things that we explored in the program. And then, of course, like I didn't know anything about coding before. So now having familiarity with both R and Python, but particularly R, is really useful. And I find myself going to that and just kind of pulling it up when I want to explore some data, as opposed to using what I used to do with Google Sheets or something else. So that's, yeah.
Very cool. So Scott, I actually am a little bit surprised, right? So Activision is, known as, a pretty heavy duty coding shop, right? A lot of, big stats brains over there. And yet you really kind of jumped on, to this topic about data communication as a core focus. What would you say the balance is, right, between, maybe, kind of the hardcore modeling parts of your job and, the data cultivation and communication parts of your job?
I'd say the data storytelling and structured thinking parts, as Julian and Carrie were talking about, those are table stakes. If you don't have those, you're kind of sunk. It doesn't matter how sophisticated your analysis is, how cool your model is, what it predicts, what it can do for the business. If you can't get someone who can make a decision to understand it and value it, it's functionally useless, even if it is really cool and shiny. So make sure you can get that soft skill taken care of. After that, it's just the sky's the limit for what you can do with the technical skills. There is, again, like a base level for what you should have if you expect to have a job in the field with those technical skills, which I feel like the data science program will more than adequately prepare you for. Expect on-the-job learning for sure, but what you'll have here is enough to get you with your foot in the door. So as far as the technical skills go, one thing that I kind of wish I had taken advantage of prior to going in the program, which all of you have the opportunity to talk to learn about now. Also, I see Will Antic is in here. I've talked his ear off about this. Learn SQL like it's your second language. If we started teaching kids SQL at like age 5, oh my gosh. I'll drop a link in the chat here, but the last thing I was going to put in the chat is my retirement plans, which are Guitar Hero and Thai food. Great choice. Check this link out. This is an introduction to the SQL language so you can get data from databases. If you give a glimpse to that, you're going to be much better prepared to go into the data science program. The way I'd put it for technical skills are that SQL is often going to be like that first layer of can you actually get data from a database? Like before you can do anything cool with the data, you need the data. Even if it's just a select star from table, like you have to get it from somewhere. After that, Python and R are both things that I believe are still taught within the program, right? Just kind of simultaneously, Jameson.
Yeah, you know, there's definitely a heavier focus on R, but many of our instructors are also fluent in Python, and we do have electives that focus on Python within the program.
Sweet. I think it's helpful that the program has both of those. At a certain point, you could just use whatever you prefer as long as you can use it well to get some value from the data. But yeah, whichever one you pick up first, it's helpful to be ambidextrous with both of those, but I'd say master intermediate SQL first, which this program will do a great job of doing. And then from there, pick one of those to specialize in and be comfortable swapping between them.
Excellent, thanks. So you know that I selected star from my students table just to get all of you, right?
Yep.
Okay. My jokes don't get any better than that. Like they all had to put up with them in class for, you know, a full, 3 months? I apologize ahead of time. So Carrie, same question to you at Adobe, right? What's this kind of balance between, you know, the hyper nerds and the data communicators?
On my team, it's a big mix. I would probably say I'm one of the 2 most technical people on my team, and that's one of the reasons they wanted to hire me, is they felt they wanted someone who had a little bit more modeling background. But day to day, honestly, Scott, you kind of nailed it with SQL. That's the one thing where if I'm troubleshooting stuff, that's what I still have to do, because most of my analysis is done in Adobe tools, but I still use R pretty regularly. But the thing is, I also work very heavily with the product team. So even though the product team is responsible for all the heavy lift, I still have to communicate to them very regularly and frequently, which is having that technical skills, helping them troubleshoot, communicating a complex customer idea is very helpful to them.
So Colleen, what do you find like, you know, is most interesting to your students? Because I know that you're kind of pioneering some of this stuff at the high school level, right? And, you know, what gets them excited? Is it kind of the nerdy stat stuff? Is it the visualization? Is it the communication? Like, what do they latch on to?
Yeah, I think that honestly, it's kind of just blowing their minds a little bit right now, all the things that you can do with a computer. They're like, we're still in that phase of the school year, but you know, we start the year with working in Google Sheets because it's a program they're familiar with, and then we're adding some complexity. So we'll be starting Tableau pretty soon, and then getting into R later in the when we come back from winter break. But you know, it's just like wait, you can color code data. oh my gosh, like, look at how many things I can see. Wait, I can make different kinds of graphs. Like, so they're really into the visualization of data and like identifying patterns. And then they're really intrigued by all the different ways that you can find data and all the different places that data exists. And it's really fun for them too, when I get to say, oh, well, my friend so-and-so that I did my master's with, like, does this kind of thing with their work. And so I bring in like class examples that I remember from my classmates' presentations and things like that. And I show them my own presentations and they get really excited about that too. So I just like reuse the same things that I did for their program and they get really into it. They're like, oh, I never thought about that, or that's a really interesting way to do that. So yeah, they just love the examples and just seeing a different kind of math, really.
Right. Yeah, what we're finding at the undergraduate level especially is just this kind of connection to the real world, right? You know, is so important to folks. And it's really, you know, the thing that sets data science apart from something like computer science, which is much more, you know, about manipulating abstract concepts in the background. And yeah, so I really do love that real world connection. Julian, you and I have already talked about this a lot. I know like data communication is front and center at, you know, a consulting focused organization like KPMG. What role would you say, you know, some of the kind of harder skills, the modeling, you know, kind of the exploratory data analysis, you know, plays in your job over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I utilize my data science skill set learned here. I utilize it as my key differentiator. So I am within my practice one of the few data people. So when a director wants something or a managing director or somebody wants something that's data focused, I came in and I let everybody know I have these skill sets. I'm interested in this. I feel like it can prevent. And my previous role was in marketing analytics, and I was a consultant at that level as well. And I was working with the C-suite of a Fortune 500 company. But like, I basically said, I feel like I can communicate at that level as well. So after I got the name out there and after I made it and named it as my key differentiator, now I'm finding people are sending me projects to work on. Somebody says, hey, I need a dummy data set with 80 columns and, you know, 2 million rows. And I want you to run it through this model that I created that we're going to productize. And I say, cool. So I go out and I look up Python. R is my primary language, but I look up in Python like how to create this big dummy data set, create all these like geolocations. And mind you, I didn't have a lick of coding coming into the program. I actually wasn't very good at math coming into the program. Again, sociology to Peace Corps. So not that hard skill focused, but I was able to come in and have these very cool tools. And I was just musing to one of my compatriots today, actually a couple hours, I looked down and I was like, oh, I have an alumni call. Musing to one of my compatriots, I was like, I'm so happy that I have all these scripts and I have this like broad breadth of baseline that I was able to learn, because I'm having to do something extremely complicated right now, which I'm in a content role right now. So I'm like analyzing content and doing all this like content related stuff. It's not at all quantitative, but I found a way to make it quantitative. And they passed us a database with over like 2,000, 3,000 different articles. And I was able to take those articles, break their body down, get their essence, look at their metadata, do all these really cool, sophisticated things. I'm also going to probably run it through some sort of like text analysis. And then I'm going to translate that back by next week and provide that to the client with some actionable steps. And so like, I find ways to use it. Data science is my key differentiator and was what got me this job. So I find ways to use it. And this program really has provided a lot of opportunities to learn a lot of different things for somebody who didn't come in with a lot of quant background or really any quant background. So it just feels like a win-win-win-win. You know, as I say, you win, we all win. Yeah.
So Scott, both you and Julian also got MBAs, as part of your graduate journey. Scott, what do you think that gave you on the job market, or kind of even within your job, that sets you apart or kind of gives you a unique advantage?
Yeah, let me preface this by saying each one of the degrees I did informed what I wanted to do after that. Like, there would be no me going to the data science program without the MBA. There would be no going to the MBA without the economics degree, because I discovered the next thing I wanted to do through all of those. So the MBA itself was wonderful for getting a broad perspective of how businesses and organizations function, and the different areas of the business, the functional areas, what they care about, how to speak their language. Like, a marketing manager is going to care a lot about different things that an ops manager or HR manager might care about, that whole personnel group. So with the MBA, you could understand what each like area of the business cares about and how to speak their language. It also gave me an introduction to the quantitative methods that I use today, but I felt like it wasn't at the level that I needed to compete with other people who might have come in with more statistics research or software engineering or programming. So going through the MBA had me realize, okay, I really want to do data science, but I feel like I need to buff up my technical chops before I really dive into the field and get my first position there. So going in to the job market after getting the MSDS, which did kind of fill in those gaps for the technical skills, I feel like it was a lot easier to perform well in interviews and in the job as well, because a lot of what teams will focus on is bridging that gap between the technical experts and those who specialize in understanding the business problems, and trying to communicate those to the technical experts. So as someone with a bit of a foot in each area, I was able to understand those questions better and then go in and do the analyses and the modeling work myself. That led to me getting that analytics consulting job, because a lot of it was just directly interfacing with clients. So the person who was understanding their problems was me. The person who would go and build out the solutions was also me. So it kind of saved a step in the middle. Same thing for where I am currently with Activision. Being able to understand the business problems and speak the language of the product managers I work with is something that helps inform my analysis, keeps me from going down too many different rabbit holes and dead ends, and just focusing on how to get the analysis to where it actually drives an impact in the business and isn't just an exercise in coding. So
Thank you.
I'd say, yeah, the main benefit of having both is just it bridges that gap between understanding the business and then having the technical experience to do something about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Carrie, you had a very kind of unique job interview. Do you mind describing that, and kind of how that all unfolded for you that landed you at Adobe?
Okay, there we go. Got to unmute. So, yeah, I wasn't looking when I started this program. I started this program specifically because I liked the type of work that I was doing when I was doing analysis and wanted to learn those hard skills. Through one of the electives of the data science program's marketing analytics, you enroll in the Adobe Analytics Challenge, and my teammate and I did very well, and we became finalists. And then because of that experience, one of the judges reached out to me and asked if I was interested in working for Adobe, and I said, well, yes. But I can't move. And he's like, that's great. We all work remote. So I was like, okay, well, let's do that then. And so I started the interview process. It was 5 stages, and the final stage was 30 minutes. It was technically an hour, but I had to present for 30 minutes. No requirement was given on the topic. I just had to be compelling and tell a story for 30 minutes. And they really just wanted to make sure I could convey an idea, engage, put together a good slide deck. And then what I ended up doing was going over cribbage. I put together a model on the probability of winning cribbage hands, if there was different styles of cribbage that you could align yourself with to become a better player, and told them all about cribbage for 30 minutes. And they thought it was funny and amusing, and it was a great way to tell a story about something I do. My family plays a ton of cribbage, and had been playing and documenting my scores with one of our classmates for over the program because we had a competition going. So I had a individual data set to draw upon. So it was actually a lot of fun, learned some things, and now it's a running joke in my family that cribbage changed our lives.
And so, Carrie, were you guys, so just for context, there were, I think, over 4,000 entries, into this Adobe Analytics challenge. And did you get what, 5th or 6th place?
5th, yeah.
5th place, yeah. So like 5th out of over 4,000 international, applicants, which is quite impressive. Okay, so I want to move on and just talk a little bit about your main takeaways from the program and some advice that you might give to prospective students. And for this one, I definitely want everyone's opinion. And so why don't we start with Julian?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just getting a phone call. Is this for searching for a job? Sorry, as prospective applicants, could you repeat that? I'm so sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so for folks that are considering the program, what advice would you have, right, for them? Like, maybe tips or tricks. I know you all mentioned SQL, and maybe getting a quick primer prior to entering, but how else can students prepare or be successful? What helped you in the program?
That's a really good question. So if you're entering, I think if it's different stages, if you are prospective and you're looking for a school, I built data sets to just like on Excel or whatever. You're just like, okay, look at all the schools and I'll look at all their benefits and everything. Willamette itself is actually, the data science program is actually phenomenal. So I think there's the looking stage. And then when you first start off in the program, you get accepted, you're excited, you go in and you interview, and you maybe in that interview, you start linking times in which you have like used data with like an outcome you've done. A lot of people, when they're interviewing you, are looking for an outcome that you've done based off of like prerequisite or work that you've done. So it could be anything from how have you translated numbers into a change of anything. So having that like in the back pocket when you're like maybe going through interviews or something to come to Willamette in itself. And then when you first start, just know that you'll probably feel overwhelmed. There's a lot happening. A lot of people, especially if you have no coding background to a lot of coding background, you might have coding background in like a specific thing and not in everything that you will be inundated with. So just keep a really open mind, make sure that you breathe. I tended to meditate every day to try and really help with all the things that I had going on at that time of going through the Masters of Data Science program, but also know that no matter what, you will come out the other end much better at so many things, and you will find a way to be able to promote that. And it will help you find a way to promote those skills. By that, I mean Jameson, I mean Hillary, I mean everybody in the staff. They're completely dedicated to your success once you getting those skills, but you also being able to promote those skills. And we even talk about the data science of job seeking, and we will talk about the analytics of job seeking and how do you match their word match with your resume so you can get the job that you're looking for. So there's really a full service here. So basically know that you're in good hands once you start. Breathe and take it slow, and then have as much fun as you can. So I think that would be the structure for each of the different stages to beginning. Hopefully that somewhat answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. So Colleen, what do you think? Meditation and breathing?
Not my style, but great for you, Julian. Yeah, that wasn't how I got through it, but I would say a couple of things. So one, connecting with your colleagues and classmates is so critical. I think, Carrie, you were the one in like our intro class who started setting up like Sunday Zoom study sessions, which was really nice. It was a way for those of us, especially who were new to coding, to work together on some stuff outside of class, which was really helpful. When I was working on my capstone, I used to get together with Sarah Abadi, who's another graduate, and we would work together on our capstones just to like help each other and stay motivated. So definitely relying on your classmates is huge. And then the coding is kind of like a giant mountain, but it flattens off. So it feels really overwhelming at first if you come in without as much of a coding background like I did. But I think after about 2 or 3 weeks, it started to feel like, okay, I can do this. So just stick with it. Like it probably will feel a little overwhelming at first, but it does get a lot easier once you learn those basics. And then the other thing I would say is pick projects that you are excited about and interested in, because it was way more enjoyable, the classes where I picked projects that I was excited about and where I was using data that was interesting to me or that mattered for work. Those things were all so much more meaningful. The projects and the end products were much better. And I just had a much better time working on them and talking about them than I did on the times when I didn't pick a topic that I was particularly excited about. So definitely using data that either applies to your job or is just something that's really interesting to you personally would be my biggest piece of advice for when you get to that stage in your classes.
Thank you, Colleen. Carrie, what advice do you have?
I absolutely second the reach out to your classmates. That's a huge part of it. I think when you're in those groups too, it's helpful to see how other people are approaching a problem, because with coding, there's so many ways you can get to an end result. So getting those different perspectives is huge. The other I would say is save all your scripts. Just save them, name them, keep them with you. I think it's so helpful. I'm a big copy paster when it comes to coding now, and I want to find the script where I'm like, okay, I started with this thing, I want this, I'm gonna go find it. And the other thing that really helped me was coding along in class. So as you know, the professor's talking, you're going over things, following along just to help build that muscle memory or help with the concept to see it happen, I think is huge. I echo what everyone else said as well, that it can feel daunting, but you're all smart enough. You'll get it. It's just a matter of starting to put it in practice. And lastly, sometimes the result you get is that the data set isn't meaningful or the question wasn't meaningful, and that's okay. That's the answer. So don't feel bad if at the end of the day your model sucks. It means that, hey, that's not the direction we should go. So you got the answer.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes, indeed. Unlike an English degree, we want you to plagiarize as much as possible in a data science program. Cut and paste, steal, of course, attribute, right? But definitely steal and reuse as much as you can. Scott, what advice do you have for prospective students?
For going into the program and having successful learning and professional outcomes?
Sure, pick 1, 2, or all 3.
Get enough sleep, really. No, I would say not right now, after this, go look into that link I sent you on SQL, because straight up, that's going to help you out. Even if you know just a tiny bit of SQL, that's going to make a big difference in how you can approach the rest of the program and the rest of a career in data science. So get familiar with the basics. I believe in you. Aside from that, for actually getting out into the job market, make sure you have a visible portfolio, or at least some project available online, kind of like how we had done with Blogdown, getting our capstone projects out onto the internet. And a couple tips for that. One, doesn't really matter too much what you do, as long as you can demonstrate that you can write clearly and communicate effectively. That's something that employers are going to be looking for. Make sure it's something that you're at least interested in when you're doing your analysis, so that it kind of shines through and that you aren't stuck doing something that you're not interested in. And if you can swing it, try to make it so that the analysis that you're putting in your portfolio actually is something useful instead of just an exercise in coding. Like I was saying, if you can demonstrate that you care about something, you've coded effectively and written well, and you've done something with data that generates value for someone, doesn't have to be a company, could be a nonprofit, could be yourself, could be anything. That's going to be really favorable in any sort of hiring conversation you have, and it'll just make you a better data scientist. So those three things for your online portfolio, and then just start studying SQL as soon as possible.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate it. Hillary, I'd like to turn it back to you and maybe open things up for a couple of questions.
Sure, thank you. Are there any of our participants, if you have any questions, you're welcome to speak them now with your voice or put them in the chat, and I'm happy to read them for you. I know, China, you were asking some questions about kind of the differences between data science and computer science, which some of our panelists were tackling. But if you want to add on to that, you're welcome to do so. I will also share with everyone who's attending, we did a kind of a data science MSDS 101 with Jameson a couple of months ago that I think would be really good for some fundamental background for the program too. So yeah, I'm happy to pass that on. So yes, you guys are welcome to send questions. One question I always love whenever I meet an alum out in the world is to ask them, what was your favorite class that you did? Like, what's the class that really kind of stuck with you? That might be kind of fun to toss around. And not everyone say capstone.
I'm gonna cheat and say two. So Heather's data visualizations class, which I think is called something else now, but is it communicating with data or something? Anyway, it's one of the first two classes you take, and it is phenomenal. It's great for understanding the idea that data tells a story, and you get to make the most incredible graphs. You learn how to make maps. It's like a truly amazing class for both learning some really amazing skills and then also really getting a great introduction to what this profession is and how to use your data skills. So that class was definitely a highlight for me. Thank you, data visualization and presentation. And then the other one was machine learning, which was taught by Jameson, but I think is now taught by someone else. But that class was really, one, really interesting. And then two, we had the opportunity to take a data set from an actual business that wanted their data analyzed. And we got to analyze that data and do some different analysis with it and come up with recommendations for the company, which was a truly amazing experience of getting to actually present to this business owner and like hearing them give us feedback on our ideas and like, oh, I've never actually thought about that, or oh, that's an okay, we might actually have to try that. So that was a really special experience, I think, and it's something that I've tried to replicate for my students in the classroom as well as best I can, because it was just such a meaningful and impactful part of that program.
Great, and that speaks to the real world discussion that we were having too. So I'm happy to hear about that happening in the classroom. Do you guys have any other classroom examples or?
I would echo both. When Colleen started with data I was like, oh, I won't say that. And then I was like, oh, I'll say machine learning. So I also love machine learning. I think it was helpful. And like one of the anecdotes I take away was in that real world example, weight being a piece of the model that had impact, but weight actually means nothing. You can't tell a company make things heavier, you'll make more money. That's ridiculous. It's heavier because it's bigger and requires more. So, you know, actually thinking critically through some of that stuff was huge. And then of course, I'll always have a ton of affinity for marketing analytics because that started me on a trajectory I never saw coming. So
It's awesome. I love it. So Alan has posed a question in the chat. He's asking, what are the typical hours spent in classroom and at home each week for study? So this might speak to Scott's get a lot of sleep. So would any of you guys like to answer that?
I think it really depends on the class.
Yeah.
And where you're at. So I felt some classes, I mean, again, I had a background in SQL. So when we did that class, it was a lighter semester for me because I wasn't struggling as much to understand or Googling or something. I would say the first semester was pretty intense, and then the capstone semester was pretty intense. And by intense, I mean, I was giving up probably most of my weekends to get through homework and stay on top of things.
There's a lot of economies of learning. So like basically I feel like I would think of it as like a skewed distribution of time, where like you start off and like you're putting in a lot of time because you got to learn all this stuff, but you start getting these economies of learning and it becomes more foundational, and then you get to learn theory. And I did want to echo machine learning was definitely my number one, and Viz was my definitely number two. I made a lot of money actually on machine learning at my previous role, and I was able to present on my machine learning outcomes at basically the C-suite of a very big company, like I was saying before. And I was able to take that to them, give them insights, garner their North Stars, do all these really cool stuff. And I was able to channel machine learning into my visualization of what I found. And so it was just highly topical. It was amazing. And I didn't even use like MBA stuff for that. It was just like all that. So that was extraordinary. But yeah, I really think of it as this. But then I think probably like this skewed distribution that has like a little blurb at the end, and that blurb is your capstone. That's going to be a little bit more time consuming. So it just kind of starts to taper as you get like really, really good at it. You know, you're spending a lot less time on the fundamentals, a lot less time in data camp, a lot less time just kind of grinding to really learn the stuff. And then it really starts to level out, and then boom, you got capstone where you get to synthesize everything you just learned into one big presentation. You get to present it to some real professionals in the field. What data science is from Domino's, data science is for like some sports team, Timber something. What's the sports team? Oh wait, no, we didn't present for him. We presented for a different consultants. Anyways, it all culminates. You got to synthesize everything together. So unfortunately, it depends, but it looks like we do have some hard numbers down there. Yeah. Okay.
I think also someone's asking about like assignment examples, and that does depend a lot class to class. So some classes have readings. So for example, data ethics, we did have to do reading. It was more similar to a social sciences class, I would say, because it was a lot of reading and reading technical stuff, but it was like reading and watching Black Mirror episodes and things like that. So that class I would say was more prep intensive, like needing to prepare for discussions and things like that, maybe an hour or two a week, discussion posts, that kind of stuff. But most classes, it was some kind of practice work, like doing assignments in data camp. And that depended a lot on your level of experience. And like Julian said, when it's new, it takes a lot of time at first, but then gets a little bit easier. So it did depend a bit class to class. And then we also had various projects to do. Most classes ended with some kind of end of term project, and sometimes a paper as well. So there's kind of a real variety of coursework, but I would say that mostly also the end, like any college or graduate level class, the end of the term is usually when it's the most pressurized and intense, since that's when the final projects and presentations are happening.
Quickly, I did want to note, in our data visualization class, Heather would be like, okay, here is a 538, and here's a 538 like data chart or like visualization. Now, here's the data set. I want you to transform the data set and recreate that 538 visualization, which really gets you in the nitty gritty of ggplot, which is like what you'll use primarily what you will use to recreate that. That was a very cool assignment. It was so much fun to like recreate that, understand what's a graphic and what is something you can hard code in. And then you really get involved. And it's like and we were doing it on like Thanksgiving, what region eats what like Thanksgiving meal the most, right? So it's like, is it cranberry and stuffing? Is it okra? Is it like, all these weird, strange things in all the different places? So you get to recreate that based off this data set by 538. So that's an example where it's just a lot of fun, and you actually get a lot of those. Machine learning, on the machine learning side, it's like, here's a data set. I want you to get me some insights from this data set, and I want you to reduce what's called, or increase the kappa score, which is like, I want you to make this statistically valid if you ignore randomness. And so when you do that in machine learning, you have to do a bunch of different things, but it's like, you get to be testing all sorts of interesting things. And, so you're just given data sets and you're saying go. And that's exciting. And you get to apply everything that you just learned.
Nice. So we've had a couple more questions come through the chat, as well as my wishing that I had okra on Thanksgiving Day, because that sounds amazing. So let me see. So from Perry, can you guys give an example of how the program helped with connecting with industry professionals, either for your capstone or your career?
I have sort of a light one, which is that because I work in the school district, we had a former Portland Public Schools employee in our capstone class. So she helped me make some connections with I believe he's the chief data officer in Portland Public Schools. And then because I had to go through such an intensive process to get the data that I was using for my project, required a lot of like back and forth about what data I was allowed to have and not allowed to have. So that helped me connect with the data professionals in my work.
That's great. And that's real world too, that you don't just have unfettered access to like whatever data might be pertinent to what you're working on. That's just not how it goes. So that's a good experience for a student to have. So China also has followed up with questions which tie in with kind of a big question that I hear a lot from prospects, which is, should I apply or should I think about enrolling if I don't have any programming experience? What does that look like for people? And I know you guys have spoken to differing levels of programming when you started. Is that something any of you would want to speak to?
I think absolutely enroll. I wasn't a programmer at all. I knew SQL just from working with databases, but even that's not required. Just be prepared to do your homework and you'll be fine. You don't let that be the daunting thing. If you're curious at all, this is the program for you.
On the job search side, sorry, Jameson's on the job search side, or when it comes to connecting with industry professionals, there is availability. They have alumni networks. There's all sorts of networks that you are provided with. Having like being able to say that, you're fluent in R, fluent in Python, you have all these hard skills and so on, allows you to search, like get recognized through the algorithms, but also having an alumni network, having a shared skill set, having a shared verbiage allows you to connect with a lot of professionals in this field. And once you get to a job, but I mean, usually people who are going into school are looking for a job, but once you get to a job, I mean, Hillary just connected with me with a machine learning strategist in my own firm. It's 200,000 people. So I was able to like have these conversations on how we're going to build like a shared repository of tools and so on and so on. And we had that shared understanding, even though we live on different ends of an empire, right? So I think for both folks looking for a job, there's a lot of advantages to having these skill sets, and there's a lot of alumni networks that you can be a part of, and a lot of even just conferences you can go to once you start getting into this space and you start building out products and you start being really proud of the things that you do. And then once you actually have the job, those sort of investments continue to give is what I'd say.
The thing I would add to what Colleen and Julian have said is that we also make a point of trying to expose our students to a wide variety of industry professionals in the region in particular. So, you know, we're bringing in, you know, Chris from the Portland Timbers, right, to talk about, you know, sports analytics, right? Or we're bringing in different individuals. The chief data officer for the city of Portland, you know, is on the docket this year, right? So I think I brought in something like 12 or 13 different professionals into the capstone class last summer. We will continue to do that in the coming years. Also, you all didn't get to benefit from this, but we now have like real data science parties out in the wild that are occurring, where all of the cool propeller heads from Portland gather to hang out, talk data, and learn a little bit of something new. And of course, all of our alumni continue to be invited to these events, and the network grows over time. And so all of the folks here, for instance, are part of the Future Data Science Network as well, and are extremely helpful and generally nice people, right? So that can be a major boost to your career.
Well, we only admit nice people. It's a fact, and now it's recorded, so everyone should know. So, all right. Well, I think we're ready to sign off. I haven't seen other questions come through. Thanks you guys so much for joining. It was so wonderful to hear from all of you, and just to see you all get together. Hope to see you at some future alumni events, and you know, many more opportunities for you to come hang out with the current class, with the new folks coming in the fall, which hopefully includes some of our participants. So yeah, some thanks coming in from our participant group. Thank you to Jameson for able moderation and all that you do. And yes, thanks everyone for joining. All right, see you soon.